Wait, we had practice last night because the game was supposed to be today. And then it got canceled, but it was still practice. You know, April 20th. Or 20th. That's why I don't want to do it. I say cringe.
No, I'm not going to. Hello.
Good. How's it going? It's always the best one. You can see the back of heads. I'm not sure.
Right.
I don't know.
Just want to get a general idea.
Yeah, I don't know if both podiums are getting used. This is streaming, so yeah, I don't know what the game plan is. We're gonna have to adjust until before the chair starts speaking.
All right. Yeah, I'll take a look to try to keep the bold head out of the foreground.
No. Yeah. Whenever they do cut down on the podiums, I'm gonna pull in on them. So
okay. Yeah. All right.
Don't worry too much.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Caleb, do you know where my mom is? She was in here. I haven't seen her since.
They were like all in there when I got it. Except for my mom.
She's wearing a cheetah because I can't miss her. Yeah, the
stop me.
Everyone. Welcome to my alma mater. I'm proudly wearing my little pin here, Notre Dame of Maryland University. And also welcome to the 2019 Charles Busta Forum. Now, in your program, there's a nice picture and information about Charles Busta, but I will have to tell you as I talk about him in the next minute or two, I'm going to refer to him as CB. And so were my colleagues that also worked with him many, many years ago. That was our beloved CB. So to friends and neighbors and everyone he worked with, that was his wonderful name. And I just wanted to give a little background about the Busta Forum before we turn it over to this wonderful panel. And I was so fortunate to be able to meet all of them earlier, and I think it's just going to be a wonderful hour or so as we go through this. So let's talk about CB a little. This whole forum, it's an annual forum. It is in memory of him. He was a board trustee here at the college, and he was also a big community leader around the Hunt Valley, Moncton, Baltimore area. He was a very devoted family man, and unfortunately his wife Bonnie and daughter Carly could not be here tonight. But I do want to share a great story that thanks to Dr. Debbie Calhoun, we were able to meet with some of her business students. And we were talking about this forum, and we were explaining CB and his background. He was such a mentor to me. He hired me early in my career, and he just was an energizer, he was an inspiration, and I know that's what a lot of these panelists tonight will be to all of you. And that's part of why there is a forum here, so that you can see role models, you can see women in leadership, you can hear about their journeys, their stories, their challenges. And what was very important to CB was all of the students being able to be educated and understand the opportunities and possibilities ahead of you. I know there was a question from one of our panelists about how many students. So could I see just a hand of how many students we have here tonight? Oh, that's terrific. Thank you. That was very important to CB. Now, the last thing I'll say before I turn the mic over to Dr. Mary William is that when we were talking with the business students and we were explaining how much women and the leadership and opportunities meant to CB, one of the people said, one of the students said, well, then he would be part of the sisterhood here. And I thought that was a fantastic statement. And when I shared that, I just want you to know, when I shared that with his wife and his daughter, they were extremely, extremely touched with that. So this forum is doing exactly what we wanted his legacy to be. So thank you, and now let me turn this over to Dr. Mary Lou Yam, University President.
Thank you, Joan. Good evening, everyone. Welcome, students, faculty, staff, especially our guests. Welcome to the annual Busta Forum. This year, we have much to celebrate at Notre Dame of Maryland University. We achieved historic enrollment in our women's college this past fall as we welcomed the largest freshman class in the university's history, 225 freshmen and 238 all-new students. We launched the first art degree therapy programs in the state of Maryland, and we just received state approval in December to launch our doctorate in occupational therapy to begin in the fall of 2021. Thank you. As many of you know, our Business and Economics Department offers 3 strong undergraduate degree programs in business, international business, and marketing communications. We also offer graduate level degree and certificate programs. Our degree programs are in leadership and management and nonprofit management. The Business and Economics newest master's program is in risk management. We also feel that a big part in fulfilling our mission at Notre Dame can be obtained through our strong partnerships and relationships. Our Business and Economics Department partners with Kennedy Krieger Institute and Catholic Charities in offering their staff effective and customized leadership development courses that are rooted in excellence, collaboration, integrity, and respect for the individual. We are very proud of the work they do and their dedication to our students. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the Busta Forum Steering Committee members, and I would ask those members to please rise as I call their name. Carol Bodie, Dr. Deborah Calhoun, Joan Davidson, and John Pettit. Please stand and join me. Thank you for your commitment to this program, for bringing notable leaders to our campus, and for driving home the importance of raising business leaders. And now, on behalf of the Notre Dame community, I am very pleased to introduce our panel moderator, India Gary Martin. India is a globally recognized leadership expert and coach with a clientele of Fortune 100 C-suite executives from around the world. Aside from traditional coaching, India's practice is focused on positioning senior executives to build profile locally, regionally, globally, and leveraging her vast network. She has held numerous global C-suite roles, including assignments in London, Frankfurt, Tokyo, and Hong Kong. In her final role at JP Morgan, India was Managing Director and Global COO for investment banking, technology, and operations, with a multi-million-dollar budgetary management for 15,000 staff in more than 40 global locations. I'm exhausted just talking about that. So please join me in giving a warm Notre Dame welcome to India Gary Martin.
is just such a pleasure every time I come here. I was educated at a women's college, not this one, Spelman College in Atlanta, but this. Can you hear me? That's better, isn't it? So I have a real affinity for Notre Dame because it's the closest to me in terms of geography. So I love coming here, and thank you for having me. So without further ado, I'm going to, this panel is amazing. It was funny because I was doing some research, and I was, just as Mary Lou was saying, well, that's exhausting. This is really exhausting. This group is amazing, and I'm really, really excited to get into their stories. I'm going to ask that each of them take a minute or two just to kind of tell you about themselves. I think that hearing people's stories from them is much more effective than me necessarily reading it. And so I'm going to start with, well, let me introduce them first because that's the key. So Janese Murray here, Kate Bowers, and Major General Linda Singh at the end. So I'm going to ask you just to take, a couple minutes and tell us who you are and tell us about your story. Janese, tell me story.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I'm really, really glad to be here and just want to thank the steering committee for this invitation. My name is Janese Murray. I am a recently retired executive from the Exelon Corporation, where I led diversity and inclusion for about 11 years. A lot of my background has been in human resources, and so that was a very natural kind of fit for me. After retirement, I am now the president, yes, of Inclusion Impact Consulting, which is, I'm president, vice president, chief marketing officer. I empty the trash at night. But I'm really excited about taking my experience and working with organizations to really build inclusive cultures, increase the diversity of their workforce. And it's not just about, the right thing to do, but it's about building an innovative culture. The most important thing is, and anybody who's known me longer than 5 minutes has already heard this, I am the grandmother of Rosemary Anita Carter, who is 10 months old and fabulous. I have been married for 37 years to my husband Brian, who's a pastor and a social activist in Baltimore, and I have 2 daughters, Rachel, the mother of Rosemary, and Alexis. And I'm just glad to be here.
Hi, everyone. I also want to thank Marika and everyone and Dr. Yam for inviting us here tonight, for inviting me to be part of this amazing panel. And it seems very appropriate that we're here talking about power and influence as we lead up to International Women's Day, International Women's Month. So good energy in the room, looking forward to a great panel. As you mentioned, I'm Kate Bowers. I'm the Vice President of Client Services at Weinberg Associates, and we are a local boutique PR firm. We're right-handed, so we're very close. And what we do is really evolving from the traditional sort of PR model into more of a integrated communications and solutions agency. So what I do is I really help brands tell their story in an effective way. We work with clients locally and regionally. We work with Cirque du Soleil, the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra, the Zudo Group, and a number of other clients around town. And it's a real passion of mine. As I'm sure you'll hear later as we talk a little bit more, I have a pretty non-linear, untraditional career path, as I'm sure we all kind of do. So it's a real pleasure to be here with all of you today.
Mr. General, I have to say first, thank you for your service, because you're
And so, as we said, I'm Major General Linda Singh, and I get to be not in uniform today. It's so nice. And I do want to thank the team for, again, inviting me back to this wonderful institution and being able to just share a little bit with you all tonight. And so I have 2 daughters, that are 36 and 25, I'm sorry. My oldest daughter is a police officer. My youngest is getting ready to head off to Seattle, Washington here this summer to start medical school. So I'm not an empty nester because they keep coming back. So I'm going to try and move the nest maybe. And then I have been married to my husband for about 28 years, and we've been together over 30. And what I think is very interesting about my career, so even I've spent 38 years in the military, and I run the National Guard here in Maryland. I'm also a cabinet secretary for the governor in the state of Maryland. But I have only been in uniform full-time these last 4 years. I'm still what we consider a M-Day or a part-time National Guard men, even though that's just our terminology, but we don't have women. And so I came out of a corporate background where I retired from Accenture National Security Services, so ANSS, and where I spent a total of 21 years in the consulting profession. And so when you think about just that mixture, it really plays very well into the work that I do, not only with the military, but with Estonia and Bosnia-Herzegovina, which are our partner countries where I spend a lot of time. And so I'm excited to be here to share whatever I can, and not real sure what we're going to be asked yet, but I will do my best.
It was a secret. I wanted to keep you off guard. I couldn't tell you beforehand.
I hope there will be no math.
No, there will be no math. I too am a humanities person. Thank you very much. So, you know, when I listen to the three of you, really different, but deep backgrounds in what you do. And so why don't I just kind of start with you, Janese? One of the things, this is kind of about growth and connections and access. You chose a career in HR, and you were in HR a very long time. I think you were in healthcare and energy, both, if that's correct, my research. And so when you think about like how you made the choice to go into that space, what drove you into HR? Why did you decide HR? And then was healthcare and or energy, was that a conscious choice, or was that something that happened because you were in HR and there were roles there that you were interested in?
So for all the students in here, don't do this. So there was a reason I got into HR, which is very different than the reason I stayed in HR. I started out in retail management, and I was working horrendous hours. And I had my daughter, and I thought, wow, I need to be home evenings, weekends. I just needed a more regular schedule. And so I went to the store manager, and I said, you know, and this was, 30-some years ago, before companies pretended to care about whether or not you had a personal life. So let's take things. Well, we've got this job that nobody else wants. And it's the personnel supervisor job. And he said, but you'll have off your nights, weekends, and holidays. I said, so I knew nothing about it. All I knew was whenever the personnel supervisor called, it was the last call you actually ever returned. Because it's like, what do they have to talk about? But I had the opportunity to work with two women who had been in those roles forever, and they taught me everything. Anne and Fran, yes, that was their names. But they were so generous with their time and so generous with their information. And I fell in love with the work. I fell in love with the people aspect of it. I fell in love with just all the craziness of it. And then I started seeking out HR roles and started looking at, okay, what is it that I need to do to really be considered an HR professional? And so going into healthcare, I was with Care First Blue Cross Blue Shield. And it was an opportunity for a really great HR role where I could get my feet wet in a number of different areas. And I say I kind of grew up in HR there. And then going into energy, they actually recruited me. And so whenever somebody recruits you, it's like, I am very special. So I'm going to look at this. And not knowing as much about energy when I went, as I do now, the energy field, because it's changing so much, it was way more dynamic than I ever thought it was going to be. So, I kind of fell into this, but once I realized that I loved it, I got very, very intentional about how, to ensure that I was growing and learning and developing in the craft. And I still had my evenings and my weekends off. So,
I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'll take it. So speaking of that, you know, you're Anne Grant, and I'm going to ask this question to Kate because it's really about access. And when I look at your kind of career rise, I mean, you got to vice president pretty quickly. I mean, the grand scheme of things. So did you have an Anne Grant? I mean, what did your sponsorship look like in terms of having the kinds of relationships that helped you? I mean, I'm sure it's obviously your skill, without question. But what else helped you on the trajectory, and were there people that played a part in helping you do that?
Yeah, I think, you know, this sounds trite, but my mom has always been a steward of, you know, allowing me to be my own person. And I think that kind of foundation has carried me throughout my life. And certainly she was an amazing model with, you know, doing all she could in her career to help others. And again, I'm a bit of a cautionary tale too. Admittedly, I was not a very good student. Sorry, I was much more into being social than I was into academics. So when I got to college, it became very clear that I had some growing up to do if I was going to be successful. So I left, and for the next year and a half, I kind of immersed myself in a lot of different kinds of industries. And I know that sounds like a nice way of saying I bounced around from job to job, but I was really trying to be very intentional about figuring out what it was I wanted to do, what was I good at, and then setting very clear goals for what I wanted to do when I got back from school. So I did return to school. I went to Towson and ended up graduating early with my degree in public relations communications. And then when I got my real job, I was a couple years older than a lot of my peers, and I did have that kind of imposter syndrome, you know, looking around at everybody who seemingly had it all together, had it all figured out, had the very traditional route that they took. And I had an amazing mentor, someone that I had known from another industry, a yoga teacher, who told me, and I'll tell you all this, some of you know it, nobody has it figured out. We're all winging it all the time, and that's okay. And once she told me that, it was like the doors of opportunity just opened. And rather than comparing myself to others, I started comparing myself to the person that I was yesterday. And that just made such a powerful shift in the way that I approached my professional career, but also my personal development as well. And I have two children. I have a 2.5-year-old and a 5-year-old boy. So, you know, telling them, you know, you can do anything, be authentic is really, you know, part of what I try to instill in them too. So.
Thank you. You know, it's one of the interesting themes that I'm picking up from that is, you know, when you think about the fact that people often compare themselves to others, which is really challenging, but everybody has a backstory. You know, everybody has a backstory, and so often people's behavior is driven by their backstory, and sometimes all it takes is, you know, a moment for you to ask. So, Major General Singh, you know, I have to say that when I was doing my research on all of you, and I said, oh my goodness, look, she has medals and ribbons and medals and ribbons. And I like got to 21, and then I was like, I don't know if I can count anymore because I was kind of moving, and but you know, it's pretty. You've had some tremendous honors. And you know, when I look at the trajectory of your career, I mean, you've done both military and, you know, private sector at the same time, which is really interesting. One of the things that was really interesting to me that came out that's more recent that I wanted to ask you about, just in terms of leadership and some of the choices that you've had to make, which is really difficult, was you being a leader of the Baltimore riots in 2015. And I'd like to kind of hear about what that felt like for you, because, you know, you're kind of, you have to step out front and make some serious choices. And, you know, as someone who has a level of seniority that you do, you know, the choices that you make can change people's lives. So I'm really interested to hear a bit about that.
So that's, it is interesting that you would ask about that one, because I was about 91 days, we keep making this joke, it was 91 days in when all of this kind of unfolded. And, you know, one of the things that the National Guard, we prepare for natural disasters and civil disturbances, and it just so happened that we had just re-looked at and updated our plan the year before. And then when things started happening in Michigan, we were just like, you know, well, maybe we should really seriously relook at this plan again. And so I had actually went to a course in Harvard that was focused in on homeland security and all of the different things that we do. And 3 weeks later, I found myself in the Baltimore situation. And so if you think that someone's not, smiling down on you and helping to guide you, that to me is a very strong sense of there is a higher power that's really helping us to maneuver through all of these difficult times. But I would say that first off, I couldn't get a lot of sleep. So when you want to know what was it like, not having a lot of sleep and not really, knowing how a new team, and when I say a new team, meaning, I'm just newly working for the governor, newly working with the superintendent of the state police who had been on the job about a month. I was familiar with the mayor, so I had at least some interaction with the mayor. So then, not really knowing how everyone's going to work together to be able to kind of go at this. And so the only thing that you can do is to first off assess and say, what is your role? And my role was there to support and to be an advisor. And so if you kind of take that perspective, then it was really important to me to ensure that I could give the best advice. And that meant if I was on camera, I needed to ensure that I was there to represent the city. Okay, so everything from my perspective is I should always be thinking about what's going on in the city and how do I really make sure that I'm getting things across that doesn't add to all the problems. And that was important to me. I had also went back and really done some research on what happened in the 68 riots. And it was important for me to relay to my National Guard team is that we will not have a repeat of any of this, right? And so internally, I'm having conversations to try to set the tone and just to remind them that this is our home, this is our city, and we need to be there to not only support the police, but we also need to be there to support the citizens. And I think, as long as we kept that in mind, what I will tell you is that every single one of my soldiers and airmen were extremely proud to be here to support at the time of need. And I will tell you, even to this day, we talk about what it was like for us to kind of come through that, because I have to say we came through that. And what it's done to us, at least individually, is it's made us a lot stronger connected to the community. So we have not stopped trying to be out in the community and to be engaged in places where we think we can make a difference. And if that means, last year we did a joint military and law enforcement job fair. Or, you'll see us, we could be doing displays up at Mondawmin Mall. We're often up there doing the trick or trunk and some of those events. And so you see us really trying to be as very, as visible in the community, because what I would have hated is for, someone to see us and think that, they're not from here, because we did get a little bit of that, but that we're not part of the community and we weren't here to really help to solve versus kind of getting into more of the problems. And so even as we look at things, we go out and do snowstorms or whatever it is, I tell my folks just to be cognizant that we are a representation of the community that we serve, and we should always, always, always remember that. And I thank God that we had no incident, nothing significant that happened with us and any of our citizens. I actually had one encounter that happened, and that was between two soldiers. And that was it. And I'm like, how do you deal with that? That's okay.
Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
What's really interesting is that, as we sit here, people, Mary read very nicely, I said, my bio, and we talked about each of you and all the kind of great things that you've done. And, as a student, I kind of remember sitting in that seat, I remember thinking, wow, they're amazing, but it's not without a journey, and it's not without challenge. And so what I'd like to talk about a little bit is the challenges that you face, because, we think about growth, and we think about access, and we think about connections. it takes time to get there. And whilst there are a million wonderful things that happen, there are also lots of challenging things that happen. I always say to people, don't believe what you see on Facebook because it's the highlight reel. You know, it's all the great stuff people want you to see. I do not show a photograph of what I look like when I get out of bed. You don't want to see that. Or before I go to bed at night, either. But can we talk a little bit about some of the challenges? So if I could just ask each of you to talk about one of the most challenging career situations that you've had and how you overcame it, or what you did, so we can kind of talk about some of the strategies you can employ.
There are two that come to mind, but I'll only share one. There's probably 10 that come to mind, but I'll only share one. So in between the time that I was in healthcare and the time that I was at the energy company, I spent time at another company for 22 months. So when you say it in months instead of years, it's like a really short period of time. And I had been with the healthcare company. I was comfortable. I knew everybody knew me. I had a great relationship with the CEO. You know, I was like, how many see a Shawshank Redemption? I was like, Red, I could get for you. You know, I was well embedded into that organization, but I was also stagnant. And so comfort sometimes can feel good, but it can also be like, okay, I'm getting a little stuck. And so I was recruited away from another company, and I did not ask enough questions. And so I came into that situation heading their diversity and inclusion. You know, it's their first diversity and inclusion person. I don't want to say the name of the company, but it was a hot mess. And I just thought, and I was 50 years old at the time. And have you ever had the what have I done? And I'll never forget, so this is a goofy story, but at Care First, like we made a big deal about birthdays. There were cakes and, you know, balloons and, you know, flowers and that kind of stuff. Well, at this other company, nobody even knew it was my birthday, right? Because I had just gotten there like the week before. So I'm sitting at my desk, I'm 50 years old, and I'm just crying. I don't even have a cake. You know, that's and so, you know, so 30 days in, I'm sitting there, I'm like, this was a mistake. I should not have come here. Now I stayed for 22 months, knowing in 30 days that I had made the wrong step. I was the primary breadwinner. I had to go to college, or heading to college. I had to stay. The thing that I'll say about that, and they threw me the best going away party ever. I think they were probably as glad as
happy? That's what I was
they
going to
were.
say.
I think I was a little too happy. But the thing that I learned about that was, first of all, sometimes you just have to get through it. You know, it's not pretty. It's not pleasant. I would go in there every day, and the people were wonderful. It just wasn't a place for me. And I would go in there every day and think, I just have to get out of here. And I ended up leaving to go to what was then Constellation at the time. But when I interviewed at Constellation, I asked all kinds of questions. Because I wasn't prepared. So sometimes it's not as important to know what you want to do. It's important to know what you don't want to do, or what you're not going to do. And I was not going to walk into another situation like the last one because I didn't ask enough questions. And so when I look back on it now, I don't know that I could have successfully made the transition from Care First to Constellation without having that experience, as painful as it was. That's one thing. The other thing is age is not a determining factor. It really is about how you show up. 18, 58, 68. It's how you show up and what you offer. And if you're just going to, sometimes you're going to have to grind through some stuff. But when you come out on the other side of it, you've learned not only a lot about yourself, but you've learned a lot about what you expect of yourself and what you expect of others.
Thank you. I just want to say that my 50th birthday is in November and I'm on cakes. So if anybody wants my address, I'll give that to you.
Please,
Just come and see me
it's so
afterwards.
sad.
You don't think so? I feel that way every birthday. So I'm not sure how it's going to be for that one. Kate.
I mean, I want to share a challenge. I think it's not one particular thing. It's something that's a concept that I kind of wrestle with every day. And that's the kind of challenge of wanting to be perfect and having everything be perfect and, you know, compartmentalized in a very specific way. And I say that it's a challenge. While it's something that I strive for, it's a challenge because it's sometimes a very limiting factor. So I guess to answer your question, my biggest challenge is like my own head. You know, there have certainly been challenges that I faced in my career, whether it's with my clients or, you know, being recruited by another company and listening to your gut and intuition and staying where you are. But I think the challenge of perfection is, you know, kind of wrapped up in the notion of never being good enough. And it's one thing that I struggle with, you know, and accepting that my work and myself, sometimes I just have to be good enough, and that good is better than perfect sometimes because it gets done. So that's one of the things. I think it's a challenge, just a daily thing. It's a challenge for me.
That's interesting because it's nice to kind of hear that it continues, and not that I wish a challenge on you, but it's nice to hear that it's not all, you know, gravy all the time. Like sometimes
it's a challenge and an opportunity.
Yeah, it is. It really, really is. Interesting.
So I think one of the times that was really challenging, and I think about it as, you know, today when we've just seen that we've had a fairly young actor pass away because of health challenges. A year into my consulting job, well, actually, when I first started my consulting job, 3 days, I hadn't even reported for work yet. I ended up in the hospital and having to call them and say, well, I'm supposed to report to the client site today and I can't because I'm in the hospital. And that was the start of my journey down this whole hormonal issue of having a thyroid problem. And you know, if you know anything about how thyroids act, mine just went completely haywire after a test, and so I kind of spiraled into hyperthyroid Graves' disease, and I didn't understand what I was going through, and not knowing enough about the disease itself, it took a toll on my body. And when I say that it took a toll on my body, I couldn't remember very basic things. I had to write everything down. I would have tremors. You know, my eyes would ache. And so I was having all kinds of things going on, and I thought for sure that I was going to lose my job. I mean, if you wanted me to write a memo, I couldn't piece together very simplistic things. And it really hurt my initial evaluations in the company. And so I was actually up for manager, and I ended up not making manager the first time up as a result of it, because I came on as an experienced consultant. And part of what came up in this discussion was, you know, they started really throwing back at me the things, you know, well, you know, you can't write, and you know, you have issues, and I never said to them, well, I'm having huge medical issues, because I didn't know that it was contributing to all of this. And it took me a number of years to be able to, one, work through that, but to then really get back up on the horse and say, okay, I've got to deal with this if I want to be able to move on and get promoted. And so it was a tough situation, and it was one of those things where it was almost like they were saying that I was illiterate, but I wasn't. It's just once my thyroid kind of settled out, the new person showed back up again. So it's kind of nice, but if you don't really know what's kind of going on with your body, the thing I will tell you is that you really do need to do research and figure it out and ask the doctors and have that conversation. But that can actually show up in many different ways that can affect just how you perform, how you think, and just really your whole life.
Can I ask a question about that? Because I think this is a really important point around what you share with people in the workplace in terms of your employers around what's happening in your life. Because I know often people are pretty reticent to talk about personal issues or health or medical issues. Did you get to a point where you told them, or did you not?
I didn't, so it's really funny. My client team that I worked, because I actually worked on a client site, they knew more about, I had some medical issues because they just knew not to give me chocolate and no soda. Because that would just like put me, I'd be like the Energizer Bunny, I just couldn't sit down. But I didn't, and you know, how that played out for me a little bit later on is, you know, I was in Afghanistan and I ended up with another medical issue. Now, I worked for all guys, and this was a female issue, and I'm talking like, they actually thought that I had cancer. I actually went to these guys, and they did not want to talk about it because it has to do with female things. And I go, oh, no, we're going to have this conversation. And believe it or not, the one that you would think was, you know, would be the most, you know, toughest, I mean, he was a tough guy, but he was a Marine that I worked for. And when I sat down with him, because I just knew, okay, I've got another one of these things to go through, and I don't know where it's going to end. And he was so understanding. And I ran into him like 2 weeks ago. I haven't seen him since I left Afghanistan. And I was able to tell him how much that meant to me, that he was not only understanding, but it was very comforting to know that he wasn't going to run away from the discussion that I very much needed to have.
That must have felt really good coming from a Major General. I'd like to have heard that. No, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I think there are so many things that contribute to our success and to our growth and our aspirations. And so, you know, I always like to talk about challenges. I think those are things that shape us. And I think that hearing some of these stories is really helpful for folks who are coming along as well, to think about how they might handle situations that appear and will inevitably appear. It will not be perfect all the time over the course of their careers. Janese, I'd love to talk a little bit about D&I, diversity and inclusion, because, you know, I remember, that's your space, you know that really, really well. And I remember when I first, I guess it was maybe 1999 or so, when the kind of major kind of corporate initiatives started coming out, 98, 99, that's when it happened. And I remember that primarily there were kind of 4 or 5 strands of diversity that everybody talked about. And it was like age, race, gender, disability, and veterans was a big one. And so I remember having this conversation with a HR professional at my company. It was new, and she said, you know, we're going to start with women because that's something that we all know we're all comfortable with. And actually, you know, as I left my career, they were still talking about women and all of the other, which is great because I am one, so I'm happy about that. And I will say that I think that diversity efforts shape that, but there are so many other things that we need to think about. And I just kind of want to get your view on whether or not you experience that, because that's an organizationally driven thing. That's not driven by, you know, you can talk about it all you want to, but it's really organizationally driven. What your thoughts are about that and how that evolved as you saw it, given that you started, and that's when you really launched some of those spaces.
Yeah, a lot of diversity initiatives really started with women. And oftentimes it was driven by women, many times at leadership or senior levels, saying, hey, something's got to change around here. Is one okay? Okay. Thank you. I think that race is just really, really hard. It's loaded. And that, I'm not going to say it's easy. I want to be careful when I say this, recognizing that I'm in a room filled with predominantly women. But I think it is easier, and sometimes for male leaders, to focus or think about that, and you have to have male leaders involved, or else not a whole lot happens, because they run the show. I think it is a little bit more comfortable, because in many cases there is somebody in their life that's very important that is a woman, and generally a white woman. And you will hear male leaders say from time to time, you know, I would never want my daughter to have this experience. And so there's a way that they can kind of say, okay, you know, I can get behind this because this may benefit my daughter or benefit my sister or my wife or whatever. When it comes to race, that's a little different, because that lack of personal connection, you know, you have to be intentional about race. And you have to be intentional about, and sometimes with sexual orientation, you know, because it's really difficult and it's charged. And it's hard to talk about without people kind of going to their corners. And it requires you, if you are a white person, sometimes to hear something you really, really don't want to hear. Because you're a good person. And I'm not a racist. And how could somebody say that? So it really can get very, very touchy. And it can also be charged for the person of color who's trying to communicate that, you know. So what I'm finding now is, given everything that's kind of going on externally, there is actually more of a desire, I think, that people are feeling to kind of talk about these things now. That doesn't mean that gender inequity is all resolved. It is clearly not. There's still pay inequities, there's all kinds of things. But when that becomes the space of comfort, because you don't want to deal with everything else, then you really don't have a complete, you know, kind of holistic view of diversity and inclusion. I'm proud of the fact that Exelon was willing to go there. It took some time, but they were willing to go there and to have those conversations. And they're not fun, but you know, at the end of it, there's a different kind of relationship between the two people that have had the discussion, and the trust can start to build. But it's a tough thing, and it's got to be handled carefully.
Thank you. Kate, this is, you know, again, doing my research, you do a lot of service-based work outside of work. Right? So you serve on a number of boards, you're extremely active on a number of fronts.
I'm extremely tired sometimes.
I bet, with your two young children too. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about is how service plays into how you show up at work. Because, you know, I think that all of the really strong executives I know do have some service-related thing that they do. It's almost like the balance between the kind of grind and stuff that we have to do in the workplace versus the things that fill our souls. So tell me a little bit about that and about some of the things you do and how you leverage those in the workplace to kind of help you get through the stuff that might happen there.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm lucky enough to have a boss and leadership that encourages that. And so that there's kind of a blending with my work time and the time that I get to volunteer and contribute. So there is support and larger, you know, people at my organization. So that's definitely beneficial. But I was on the advisory board for a while last year with Marika, and that was definitely a great experience. I also sit on the Baltimore Pride Committee and the chair of the Twilight on the Terrace, which is the largest annual fundraiser for the GLCCB, Gay and Lesbian Community Center of Baltimore, to kick off Pride Weekend. Also some smaller things involved with women's health. I sat on the board for Mercy Hospital and chaired some of their events. So all very focused on people who maybe have a marginalized voice. And to kind of talk about what you were saying a little bit, recognizing my privilege, and I think with everything going around in the world, that there is some consciousness that's been raised about that, and having to confront some difficult realities and facts. And I think that has really galvanized me into wanting to use my influence into making space for people who may not have the opportunity to do those kinds of things. So, and instead, it really feeds your soul. It just feels great to do it, and it's a lot of fun.
Thank you. Major General, I was really fascinated by the fact that you spent time in Kosovo and Afghanistan, correct? Just in terms of, and this is a gender question, right? You talked a little bit, alluded to it a little bit about the fact that, when you're talking about your medical issues, you had to talk about it with men who are not prepared to have that conversation. But just in terms of being a woman in those environments that were predominantly male, and frankly, against the odds, if you look at your rank now, it's amazing. I mean, you really made it through. Were there things that you had to consider, from a gender perspective, or were there things that you experienced from a gender perspective that perhaps made you wonder whether it was the right thing for you to do, or was it not that way for you?
So going into Kosovo, I think it was a little different. But going into Afghanistan, I worried because my last name is Singh, And if you know the history of the region, and I'm just like, okay, am I gonna be like accepted, not accepted, how is this gonna go? And believe it or not, I think what I've been able to do really all the time is I engage with people and I treat people like I want to be treated, regardless of where they're from. I try to understand the culture. I really try to get that understanding so that I don't do something that will offend someone. So, because when you offend them right off the bat, that just doesn't start off a really good relationship. And so in Afghanistan, I was a mentor to, and I was a colonel at the time, but I was a mentor to a major general in the Afghan National Army. And it was interesting how he relied on me to give him advice from a technology perspective and some of the other things. And you would think you would have absolutely nothing in common with someone from these areas, and I will tell you that if you just kind of let down your guard just a little bit to really get to know folks, you will find that you can find something in common, whether it's their families, whether you're talking about just your careers. But when we're dealing in the military, the one thing that I will tell you is that most other countries really respect the U.S. military. And so when they get a chance to engage with you, it doesn't matter whether you're male or female, but when they see female officers at a very senior level, they will engage with you very differently because they know that you work very hard to get there. And so even now, I go to Bosnia-Herzegovina, and I go to Estonia, and I'm dealing with all men for the most part, unless some of the senior folks like the Minister of Defense in Bosnia-Herzegovina is a female. But when I'm dealing with the military, I'm dealing with all senior guys, and I don't look at them anymore as if, oh my God, that's a guy or that's a girl. I mean, even though you do recognize the differences, but I treat them as their peers, and that has served me well. But the one thing that I will tell you is, and you will find this in the corporate environment and in the military, let me just tell you, the games they play are real. So I'm not going to say that they don't exist.
There's one more thing I want to ask each of you, and then we're going to move to Q&A, because I'm sure folks have lots of questions, and we've covered a lot of ground. And so thank you for your candor and kind of answering the questions. But my one question for you all, this is a little bit more fun, is give me 2 words that describe you, that you want to be remembered for. So when you like on your kind of like, that's too morbid. Okay, 2 words that you want people to think when they think of you, these 2 words. So Kate, I'm going to start with you this time.
I think I would want people to remember me as someone who was really passionate about whatever, which doesn't sound very passionate, but wasn't passionate about anything, I guess, is a better way to clarify that. If there's something that I'm interested in or for someone that I'm speaking with, I give 100%, and I want people to feel that in my interactions with them. And the other thing I want people to know is that I had integrity and that I was honest. So I think that that's the basis of everything that we can ever do.
Great, thank you.
I think I would use relentless, because I want people to know that I never, ever gave up, and I never, ever will give up. So I am very relentless about everything that I pursue, everything that I do. I believe that there's always a way. And then the other one I would say is inspirational. And that kind of fuels my soul, is to really be an inspiration to maybe, the homeless person on the street that I talk to every morning when I come into the office, or the kid who's washing my windows at the light. And I'm just like, really, that water is dirty and my windows are really dirty, but I'm still going to give you the $1. I'm going to talk to you anyway. And so I really want people to hopefully take something from my life and not have to repeat that in their life.
Now it's your turn.
Okay. I hate following that because because that is really, I don't know if I'm going to be that meaningful. Okay, good. So I think partner. And, with the work that I did, I didn't do any of it alone. And so it's always about partnership. There's somebody in this room right now that was like a major partner for me. And the other thing is fun. I mean, if you gotta be there, right, you might as well have some fun. So I like to be really this fun.
So before we go to Q&A, can we please give these wonderful ladies we're going to switch over for Q&A. I have to say this because I cannot be rude and I'm having such a good time, but I am on the way to the airport for a flight right now. And so I am being relieved of my duties. Thank you, ladies, very much. Thank you.
India, thank you so much for being here tonight. Can we all give India a round of applause? So I'm obviously not India, Gary Ryan. I'm Elisa Ross, Director of Alumni and Alumni Relations at Notre Dame, and really is an honor to sit up with all of you today. Our preference first goes to students. So students, if you have any questions, if you raise your hand, and our mic runner will come to you actually over here in the sweatshirt. First, if you can say your name, your class year, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, major visa.
My name. So like you said, my name is Teresa. I'm actually a senior. That's what I study because it's a very hard subject. So I'm a behavioral neuroscience major with a Spanish and math minor, and I'm hoping to graduate within one more year. That's my hope. And I want to first thank you all for sharing such inspiring stories, and it's really assuring to know that no matter what age you are, you're still winging it. Thank you for telling me that. Secondly, I think, Kate, you mentioned the imposter syndrome. And so I want to ask, how do you cope with imposter syndrome as well as burnout while balancing your mental health, your work, and your life? Because I know how much you three women, and at least you two, have achieved so far.
That's a great question. All of those questions are really great. I think when you're, at least for me, when I look at balance and work-life balance and balancing everything that we're all juggling, it's not, every day is not going to be balanced. And I think that's a misconception that you look at the end of the day and you see that the pie chart is all equally divided. I mean, that's never going to happen. But I think what's most important, and talking mainly about the balance, is that whenever you're doing something, so I work from home on Fridays with my children. It's like, with my two toddlers, it's kind of like the worst of all worlds. Because I have to be a parent and I have to be, an employee. But I do like to try to segment, when I'm with my children, to give them 100% of my attention. And when I am working, to give that 100% of my attention and really be intentional about how, I'm spending my energy, because as everybody knows, it gets burnt out very easily. In terms of imposter syndrome, it's a challenge. I think, like I said before, the recognition that everybody's kind of winging it was a huge, like blew my mind. But I think what is important to me is that I'm constantly demonstrating to myself that I do know what I'm doing. And I celebrate the little wins. And I start every day with just writing down 3 things that I'm grateful for. Sometimes I'm grateful that I just got out of bed. But really, I'm grateful for the women who come before me, who taught me what to do. But I think imposter syndrome is a daily practice, because it's insidious and you can let it sneak in. And I think it is much easier to keep it at bay daily than to play catch up. So that would be one of my strategies, is that I focus on gratitude and I celebrate the little wins every day.
Anyone else want to do that?
talking about inner balance. I forget who said this, but you can have it all, just not at the same time. And that there is a season for everything. And cutting yourself some slack when you're in a particular season where the bathroom is dirty all the time. Or you haven't cooked a meal, you know, your children are like, you know, going through the McDonald's, whatever the case might be, you know. So it's really about just recognizing that it's a season. And then there will be another season that comes along that replaces that will smooth it out. So you can have it all, just not the same now.
Other questions?
Hi, I'm Skylar. Do I have to show anything else?
No, that's good. What's your question, Skylar?
I'm sorry. My question is, it's for anybody, it's up for anybody who'd like to answer. And so, the question is, before you guys got into the positions that you are in now, were there any strong women that you came across in your life that acted as mentors, and what was the best advice that they gave you?
Good question. Major General, let's start with you.
Well, since I joined the military at 17, I will tell you, and I say this all the time, is that my grandmother, who had 14 living kids plus me for 9 years, so she raised me for 9 years, and she was a little lady, and she was someone that inspired me, that I always wanted to do more for, and we lost her the year right before my youngest daughter was born. And you know, I tell you that because I look at what she went through, and she would come home every single day. She cleaned people's houses for a living, took care of other people's kids, and then she would come home and cook for us. She would work with us, and she did that time and time and time again. And I say that she was definitely someone that inspired me, because if you raise 14 kids, 2 daughters, and then you take a grandkid in at 3 months, in my book, you're the mom.
There was a woman that I worked for when I worked for Care First. Her name was Sharon Becchione. And Sharon was one of the she was just one of the smartest people I think I ever worked for. And from a common sense standpoint too. You know, common sense can really, you know, take you, education's great, don't get me wrong, but common sense, a healthy dose of that is good too. And Sharon was especially good at navigating tricky situations. And it was funny because we were walking down the hallway. There was this long hallway to get to the CEO's office. She reported to the CEO. She was the head of HR, reported to the CEO. And he called us in for something that wasn't going to be pleasant. And she's thinking, okay, this is how I have to approach this. And her mind was moving as she was walking down that hallway. And she said, thank God this hallway is long, because this is when I'm really kind of thinking, you know. And she started out as a secretary, worked her way up. She was tough, she was fair, but she was also just really, really, really smart. And what I learned from her was really power and strength, but not in a demeaning or insulting way, but just to be able to demonstrate strength through her own intellect, through what she knew. And so whatever your strength is, you know, you can demonstrate that. And the other thing she always taught me was, I don't care how late you are, don't run. Because then you just look like you're late. There's just nothing cute about running down the hallway. I mean, if you're late, you're late. You know, try not to be late, but if you're late, don't run. Unless it's for class. I forgot to have the emphasis.
One more, I think we have time for one or two more questions.
I think maybe you touched on, when men play games.
The microphone's coming.
I think you touched on, a comment, men, they play games. I'm a consultant, a business architect for small and mid-sized companies. I've had a lot of women CEOs that have hired me, and let's call it what it is. Women play games too, and that's one of. and I'm an advocate for women. I champion. I'm pro women in every aspect. How are we going to break, in your businesses, where are we with that? I think we're going to see more of that when more women are in leadership roles, on boards, in the big house, in places that have just been male dominated. But I see this constantly. I see people, even in associations that I'm a part of, they're not supporting each other. And we could be so much further, even with diversity, even with gender. I really believe that the future is female, and we're still seeing this happening now, and it's 2019.
Yeah, so I did say that my outside voice, I did do that. So the one thing is that you have to remember especially a lot of the senior women, while I don't think it's that they're not necessarily supportive, it's just they're still struggling to remain where they are. So sometimes it could be hard for them to say, oh, I've got to support somebody else, and I'm not making excuses, but in some cases it is real that they're still struggling to try and stay where they are and to do a good job, and so they don't raise their head up and to see, okay, who else can I pull up, unless they're really comfortable with themselves and they're comfortable with the roles. And what I will tell you is that there are differences in the way that we play the game, right? That I think that in some cases women are just downright nasty to one another, and there's really no place for it. And so after having worked, so I actually worked for a female in the consulting side, and we just had our ladies. So I have to give a shout because I heard this is really good for your mental capacity of doing a ladies' weekend away and spending time with the girls. Well, I just came from spending time with the girls. I was like, oh yes, thank goodness. And one individual in that group, so we've been doing this for about 8 years, was the woman that I worked for about 15 years ago. And she was tough as nails. But the one thing that she taught me was how you look out for each other and how you look for somebody behind you and start pulling them up. And that's important. And I think until we start changing the dynamics ourselves, and I tell my folks that if you don't like the game that's being played, change the board. Right? No one says you can't change the board. While they're still looking for that board, you change the board. And how we make a difference is we have to show up and support each other. So I just looked at my magazine, and I'll make sure that I get the links out when we're ready to do this, but we're doing a special edition magazine. And why am I extremely proud of this? Because I looked at the front of it, and I looked at the diversity, and I said, wow, for 4 years I've worked to get the right people in the right place, and I have a very diverse team. But then I did something that was even more stunning because I could. And so my 3 top positions right underneath of me, I had qualified women, and I picked them. Not caring about what people were going to say and what they were going to do and why, because one, they deserved it, and two, because I was in the position to be able to reach down and grab.
Thank you. I have one final question to each of you. We've talked about growth and connections and access and not so explicitly resiliency. What advice would each of you give to your younger selves?
Yeah, sure. I think I would say to my younger self, and even to my current self, stop focusing so much on the future. And that sounds very simplistic, but I think, you know, when I go through my daily life, I think, oh, okay, you know, just make it to dinner time, just make it till the kids are down, or, you know, when my children are 10, things will be so much easier. I think we're always kind of looking to the future. I saw someone say, no, it doesn't get easier when they're 10. No, it doesn't at all. You know, and in a positive way, I think we set these milestones for each other, and we meet them, and I think that that's great. But to really be present and focused on where you are, and to just enjoy the little things, whether it be something as simple as, you know, I love driving in the car with the windows down and a great song on, you know, and sometimes that's good enough. So I think I would tell myself, enjoy where you are now. There's great stuff ahead of you, but really capture the present moment.
I think I would tell my younger self that, you know, it's not your fault what other people do, and they do to you. So stop taking it all on your shoulders and let the blame sometimes reside with others. And not to walk around with a chip on your shoulder. Because I spent a lot of time being angry for probably, you know, a good portion of my early years, you know, my teens time and my early 20s. And, you know, when I realized that anger, that was wasted energy, it was wasted time, and it really got me nowhere. And so I tell myself to chill a little bit. Take it a little bit lighter.
I think that I would tell myself to take more risks. I think I played it safe. And, you know, safe feels safe. And taking a risk feels very scary, but when I have done it, it's really been, regardless of how it turned out, it's really been like, okay, I'm really glad I did that. So I would tell myself to take more risks.
Thank you all so very much.
Yes, we want to say thank you to the three panelists. We have a small gift for you that I want to hand out. But also, I wanted to repeat how they each described themselves, because I think that's important for us to remember. Hopefully, as students, some of those words also were ones that you were going to be thinking of, or as you look forward. And it was passionate, it was have integrity, it was be relentless, be inspirational, make partnerships, and absolutely have fun. So I do want to say thank you to the panelists. It was wonderful. We so appreciated the honesty and the answers, and I hope all of you students and everyone else that came here really were able to think through some of these thoughts and just go forward and conquer. And I think also, let's go out and support each other. So with that said, after a round of applause, please join us out there in the reception, because we'd love to have some further discussions, and our panelists would love to speak to you also. So thank you very much.